The only way we're going to have even a semblance of a functioning country is if we take some of these executive orders and take them to the courts. Lawyers are going to have to continually sue the Trump administration because the Trump administration is going to keep on trampling over the other branches of the government because freezing spending is outside of the realm of what the executive branch is supposed to do. But thankfully, a judge, at least temporarily, suspends Trump's spending freeze. So we've already talked about this. Just yesterday, Trump signed executive orders freezing federal funds, sending lots of programs into tailspins, sending people into tailspins, wondering if they were going to get the funds, the grants, whatever monies that they needed to live, survive, and function as a business. He decided to just freeze these funds. Then we get this breaking news. A federal judge has halted Trump's freeze on federal aid programs, ruling that the courts need more time to consider the potentially far reaching ramifications of his order. Minutes before the directive from Trump's budget office was to take effect Tuesday, U.S. Judge Lauren Ali Khan blocked the Trump administration from implementing it for now. Ali Khan's order will expire February 3rd at 5 p.m. The Trump administration cannot suspend disbursement of any congressionally appropriated funds until then. The judge described the move as a brief administrative stay intended to maintain the status quo while further litigation can play out. I think there is a specter of irreparable harm, said Ali Khan, an appointee of Joe Biden. And irreparable harm is seemingly what the Trump administration and his Project 2025 people want to do. They want to be cruel and seemingly just harm people. All right, it says the ruling is a win for nonprofit and public health groups who said even a brief implementation of Trump's freeze could cause devastating outcomes for people who rely on federal funds for services, as well as the workers who provide them. The nonprofits also argued the order from the Office of Management and Budget intrudes on First Amendment rights by seeking to block funding for groups that engage in DEI programs or promote gender ideology extremism, concepts targeted in Trump's initial round of executive orders. Justice Department Attorney Daniel Shway had argued that the groups had failed to show that they needed an immediate halt to the order issued by Trump's budget office and has said to take effect at 5 p.m. Tuesday. He said additional guidance offered by the Trump administration should alleviate concerns about the OMB directive cutting off essential programs. They request sweeping relief, not tethered to any identified grant programs, Shway said. It would be appropriate to allow these issues to be addressed on a more orderly timeframe. So we'll see what the Trump administration, how they're going to come back. But I still do not understand how he could just use an executive order to override funds that were issued by Congress. At any particular point in time, someone needs to admit that these people really do want just a full out monarchy or theocracy, or he said he was going to be a dictator. He's literally become that. And so many people have voted for this, even though he said it. He said he was going to do this. And he's doing literally everything he said. Hashtag promises kept. He promised us to. And remember also, Elon Musk said that the voters, the people, should brace for economic hardship. They were planning on harming people, and they are doing that. All right, let me know what you think about this one. So we already know that Trump and his administration already said that they were going to go for bloody mass deportations. They already said that ICE can go into people's schools, churches, wherever, funerals, weddings to round people up. We already know that they are, going to people's work sites, is making people not go to work, is making people not show up in the field or whatever. But this is wild. This one is crazy. Why are they picking up Native Americans? Please explain why they are picking up Native Americans. All right, so this is not being talked about nearly enough, and this definitely needs people to see this and have some eyeballs on this. Navajo Nation leaders raised alarm over reports of indigenous people being questioned and detained during immigration sweeps. They are brown people. They are brown people. So ICE is just rounding them up. Everybody should know and understand that this is not even just about illegal immigrants or whatever. They are rounding up brown people. At least 15 indigenous people in Arizona and New Mexico have reported being stopped at their homes and workplaces, questioned or detained by federal law enforcement, and asked to produce proof of citizenship during immigration raids since Wednesday, according to Navajo Nation officials. The reports, which have caused panic amongst tribal communities in both states, come amid Trump's administration's attempt to ramp up undocumented immigrant arrests nationwide and amass a larger force to carry out the president's deportation pledge. CNN has reached out to the White House for comment. The reported raids an exact number of, I'm not sure if this is Diné, and Navajo and other indigenous tribal citizens who were apprehended are still under investigation. Navajo Nation Council Speaker Crystalline Curley told CNN. It is unclear if Immigration and Customs Enforcement or other law enforcement entities were conducting the apprehensions. ICE has not responded to CNN's request for comment. Navajo Nation officials have contacted the Department of Homeland Security, the governors of Arizona and New Mexico, and ICE to address the reports. The Office of Navajo President Bu Nigren said in a news release Friday. My office has received multiple reports from Navajo citizens that they have had negative and sometimes traumatizing experiences with federal agents targeting undocumented immigrants in the Southwest, Nigren said in the release. Justin Ahasteen, executive director of the Navajo Nation Washington office, said his office has not confirmed any reports of ICE action against Navajo citizens. Maybe they don't know that they are different. I mean, they are brown. Maybe they're just looking at a color swatch and just picking up brown people. According to Ahasteen, one tribal member was involved in a raid in Phoenix. Ahasteen told CNN the incident was a wrong place, wrong time situation, and the tribal member who presented their tribal identification was questioned while in custody, was not the intended target. The person was released, Ahasteen said. CNN has contacted New Mexico State Police, the Navajo County Sheriff's Office, and the Navajo Nation Police Department for comment. Arizona State Senator Teresa Hattley, who is Diné Navajo, told CNN she received a report from a family of a Navajo woman who said she was questioned by ICE and asked to show proof that she was Native after her workplace was raided Wednesday morning. The woman says she was at her work site in Scottsdale, Arizona, when she and 7 other indigenous citizens were lined up behind white vans and questioned for 2 hours without their cell phones or a way to contact their families, according to Hathley. Now, is it ICE or some other entity? I don't know, said Hathley, who represents Legislative District 6, which encompasses the Navajo Nation. I did work with some individuals to confirm whether or not ICE did do that worksite raid, but the communication back to me was that it's not a normal practice for ICE to confirm a raid or not. The woman says she was eventually permitted to use her cell phone and text family members who sent a photo of her certificate of degree of Indian blood, CDIB, and she was allowed to leave, Hathaway said. It is unclear what happened to the 7 other indigenous people who were questioned. The Navajo Nation Council received the reports through social media and calls to council delegates from families who said they were visited by ICE at their apartments and place of work, Curley said. There's a lot of fear, and I know they're probably feeling frustrated knowing that they don't feel safe in the country where they were born and where their ancestors come from, and there's a lot of frustration of them being stereotyped. I think there's a confusion with other races, maybe just because having a brown skin automatically being profiled or stereotyped to be in a certain group or of race. Hathaway pointed to the double standard of indigenous people welcoming settlers who later colonized their land, forced Native children into violent boarding schools, and banned displays of Native cultural practices, only to be victims of practices such as immigration raids, when the law enforcement officials' ancestors were immigrants themselves. If you can't say, we've been here for a time immemorial, then you're an immigrant. You're not from here. So who are you to classify our indigenous people? These lands have been a melting pot for many ethnicities. It's too kind to say it's racism or discrimination. It's disrespect for humanity. Indigenous people urged to carry their documentation. Operation Rainbow Bridge, a nonprofit that supports Navajo citizens who are victims of Medicaid fraud in Arizona, has launched the Immigration Crisis Initiative to assist Indigenous people impacted by federal law enforcement raids. DNA, which means the people, is how Navajo people refer to themselves, and other Indigenous tribal members are being advised to carry state issued identification along with their certificate of degree of Indian blood in preparation of possible run-ins with federal immigration officials and other law enforcement. The initiative has a hotline for people to call so DNA and other Indigenous citizens who are being questioned or detained can call for immediate assistance and to help government officials identify the documents they are being presented with. Although a person might be carrying their certificates and tribal identification cards, many of the reports said the agents who detained or questioned them didn't acknowledge the documents as valid proof of citizenship. With the way things are going right now in these types of situations, we have to put measures in place to help our constituents and government entities so that they can be a resource, Hathaway said. Tribes should communicate to Homeland Security and say, this is a sample of our travel enrollment card. This is a sample of our certificate of Indian blood. If you have any questions to verify, there is a hotline. Here is a website, Hathaway added. The Navajo Nation Office of the President released a tip guide for Diné who are confronted by immigration agents. The guide advises them to request to see the agent's identification to confirm their legitimacy, exercise their right to remain silent, and speak to an attorney if they are arrested or detained, and to document the interaction if possible so they could later report the encounter. Navajo Nation officials urged DNA and other Indigenous tribal citizens to apply for their tribal ID cards, such as the Navajo Nation ID card if they don't have one. Families are also being urged to educate their children on the ongoing incidents. The guidance also advises against opening their doors if immigration agents show up at their homes without showing a valid warrant signed by a judge. Some public sites, organizations, and restaurants are being raided by ICE. Operation Rainbow Bridge states on its website, as a precaution, your children should memorize your phone number and their social security number, and everyone should have current, valid documentation on them, including social security cards, Navajo Nation ID cards, certificate of degree of Indian blood, or passports, according to the statement. No one is illegal on stolen land. For Indigenous people who inhabited the Americas for thousands of years before the colonization of their lands and the brutal treatment of their people, the recent sweeps have reopened old wounds. DNA elder James Jackson, an honored activist in the Navajo community, told CNN the recent immigration raids and their impact on his community are shameful. It's making people hyper aware of their surroundings, limiting their travel in their daily lives because they worry they will get stopped, said Jackson, who lives in Tuba City between the four sacred mountains of the Navajo, 90 miles north of Flagstaff, Arizona. Although he worries for his community, Jackson says he also feels anger on behalf of immigrants from other countries who came to the U.S. to escape violence and economic hardship for the sole sake of their family's survival. No one is illegal on stolen land, Jackson said. It really goes back to the indigenous way of life, that everything is made for the people. People have to understand that this is not the way to live or to be honorable and neighborly with each other. Anti-immigration tactics like the recent raids, Hathaway and Jackson said, go against indigenous values and their ways of life, which allowed Native people to prosper and live in harmony with the land for thousands of years before American colonization. And so there we have it. Please share this because mainstream media is not reporting this nearly enough. These people are indigenous, meaning they were here first and they are being harassed, stressed out, traumatized, terrorized by the American government that only sees brown skin and says that they need to catch these brown people. Okay, y'all, join the conversation. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to like, comment, and share.